Welcome to Prague, one of the most beautiful capital cities in Europe. Prague has been an important city throughout the centuries, and it was the historical capital of the Kingdom of Bohemia. Nowadays, the capital of the Czech Republic is one of the most visited cities in Europe for its diverse architecture, rich history, exciting culture, and utter beauty. The historic center of Prague is a UNESCO World Heritage Site because it represents a fine example of continuous urban growth from the Middle Ages to the present day. It comprises the Old Town, the Lesser Town, and the New Town. Some of the best things to see in Prague are the Charles Bridge, the astronomical clock, and the Castle of Prague, which is the largest castle complex in the world, according to the Guinness Book of Records.
If you ask us, we could spend months in Prague just taking in the city's sheer beauty. However, this video is about how to spend 4 days in Prague. We hope you enjoy it. You can fly to Prague from several cities in Europe and beyond. You can also get to Prague by train from other Central European cities such as Vienna, Bratislava or Budapest. Once in Prague, the best way to get around the city is by walking or using public transport. If you plan to heavily rely on public transport and do a lot of sightseeing during your trip, the Prague Visitor Pass can save you valuable time and money. A fun way to get around Prague is the city's hop-on hop-off vintage tram. It makes sense to start your first of 4 days in Prague at one of the city's most iconic spots, the Old Town Square. Buzzing with life all day long, the Old Town Square is adorned by impressive buildings and sculptures such as the Gothic Church of Our Lady B14 and the Jan Hus Memorial. Yet, the most famous building in the Old Town Square is the Old Town Hall with its astronomical clock. Inside the Old Town Hall, you can visit the reception halls, the Romanesque underground, and several other areas. You can also go up the tower of the Old Town Hall to enjoy panoramic views of beautiful Prague. But even if you don't step inside the Old Town Hall, make sure you pick a spot in front of its astronomical clock 10 minutes before it strikes the hour. Every hour, the astronomical clock puts on a unique show. Death, represented by a skeleton, rings a bell, and the 12 apostles parade at the windows above the clock. For the best views of the Old Town Square, head to Terasa You Prince, a rooftop bar opposite the Old Town Hall, before you resume your walk. Walk along Celetná, one of the oldest streets in Prague and part of the Royal Route, until you reach the Powder Gate Tower. Originally one of Prague's 13 city gates, the Powder Gate Tower serves as a visual border between the Old Town and the New Town. It's worth climbing the 186 stone steps to the Powder Gate's viewing gallery for spectacular views of Prague. In the afternoon, visit the Jewish Museum in Prague. Founded in 1906, it houses vast collections spread across 7 different sites. One of the most impressive among them is the Spanish Synagogue. Constructed in 1868, the Spanish Synagogue is the most recent synagogue in the Jewish town. Its gorgeous interior is influenced by Moorish architecture and it resembles the Alhambra in Spain. Outside the Spanish synagogue, don't miss the statue of the Prague-born Franz Kafka, one of the 20th century's most prominent writers. Another essential stop is the Pinkas Synagogue, an emotional memorial to the Czech Republic's 80,000 Holocaust victims. Right next door to the Pinkas Synagogue, the old Jewish cemetery awaits in utter silence. Throughout the centuries, the cemetery was expanded, but it was never big enough. As a result, people started burying bodies on top of each other after some point. One of the oldest Jewish burial grounds in the world, the Old Jewish Cemetery, is now home to 12,000 tombstones. Other sites to visit in the Jewish town are the Ceremonial Hall, which houses an exhibition dedicated to the Jewish community's death rituals, the Maisel Synagogue, the Robert Gutman Gallery, and the Clausen Synagogue. And your first of 4 days in Prague at one of the city's best parks. Letna Park overlooks the city of Prague from atop Letna Hill. Since 1991, the park has been dominated by a functioning metronome that now stands where an enormous monument to Joseph Stalin used to be, until 1962, when it was demolished. Letna Park is abundant in quaint paths and amazing viewpoints, and it's also home to one of the prettiest beer gardens in Prague. Dominating the city's skyline for centuries on end, Prague Castle is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and one of the best things to see in Prague. The buildings inside the castle complex represent various architectural styles. The city's cathedral, the imposing St. Vitus, is part of the castle grounds. A fine example of Gothic architecture, St. Vitus Cathedral hides a treasure of beautiful stained glass windows within its walls, some of which were created by Alfons Maria Mucha, the famous Czech painter. Another church worth visiting is the Basilica of St. George, the oldest surviving church in Prague Castle. While in Prague Castle, don't miss the chance to step inside the old royal palace. However, the ultimate highlight of Prague Castle is no other than the picturesque Golden Lane. This street is lined by cute small houses, the last remnants of small-scale architecture in Prague Castle. Those houses were built in the 16th century for the castle's gods. In the 17th century, they were used by goldsmiths, hence the name Golden Lane. Nowadays, these tiny houses are painted in bright colors, and some of them offer glimpses into the lives of their former occupants. Franz Kafka lived for almost a year at house number 22. Before you leave Prague Castle, take a moment to admire the view of the beauty that is Prague from up there. After you visit Prague Castle, it's time to get acquainted with the charms of the Lesser Town, one of Prague's most historic neighborhoods. Start at the Wallenstein Garden, the ideal place to catch your breath after wandering around the grounds of Prague Castle. The Wallenstein Garden is part of the early Baroque Wallenstein Palace, which is now the seat of the Senate of the Czech Republic. During your pleasant stroll, you will come across impressive statues and fountains, a gorgeous pond, and an artificial cave that was once known as a secret garden. In the Lesser Town, you can also see the Church of St. Nicholas, the most famous Baroque church in Prague, and walk through the narrowest street in Prague. At 50 centimeters wide, the street, which is in essence a flight of stairs, doesn't have space for two people to cross it when coming from opposite directions, and this is why a traffic light system is installed. For literature lovers, the Franz Kafka Museum is an essential stop in the Lesser Town. The museum narrates the life and work of one of the greatest writers of all time through original photos and manuscripts. Outside the Franz Kafka Museum, have a look at David Czerny's bronze statues of two men who wee-wee in a pond shaped like the Czech Republic. Before you leave the Lesser Town behind, it's worth going up the Lesser Town Bridge Towers for the most spectacular views you could ever dream of. From the 26-meter-high viewing gallery, you can watch life go by along the gorgeous Charles Bridge. For the best panoramic views of Prague, continue to the top of the higher tower. You've seen it from above, but now it's time to go near and surrender to its utter charm. Welcome to one of the prettiest and most famous bridges in the world, the almost unbearably romantic Charles Bridge. Constructed between 1357 and 1402, Charles Bridge is the oldest bridge in Prague. It's lined with several elaborate statues that were later additions. Charles Bridge is beautiful any time of the day, so make sure you come back at night to see it dimly lit to perfection. Once you've walked to the other end of Charles Bridge, we'd recommend climbing up the Old Town Bridge Tower, unless of course you're done climbing after the Lesser Town Bridge Towers. Built in the 14th century, the Old Town Bridge Tower offers breathtaking views of Charles Bridge and Prague Castle. We promise that the 138 steps to the viewing gallery are totally worth it. After all this sightseeing and tower climbing, there's no better way to relax than joining a river cruise. There are many boat tours available in Prague, but we'd recommend taking a historical tour on board the so-called Prague Venice boats. These old-fashioned wooden boats depart from a hidden dock near Charles Bridge and take you on a journey through Prague's past and present. Due to their compact size, the Prague Venice boats are among the few vessels that can enter the quaint Devil's Canal. The river cruise lasts 45 minutes and there are free refreshments and snacks offered on board. Start your third of 4 days in Prague right where you left off by taking a closer look at the old water mill before you continue to the adjoining Lennon Wall. The wall of the seat of the Maltese Order was where people started writing messages against the regime in the 1960s. 20 years later, the face of John Lennon was drawn on the wall. Lennon Wall has been the symbol of freedom and change ever since. Remember David Cherney, the Czech sculptor who created the Wee Wee Man we talked about earlier in this video? After seeing Lennon Wall, walk to Kampa Park to admire Cherney's gigantic crawling babies. While there, you can also enjoy fantastic river views. After a 5-minute walk from Kampa Park, you will reach Újezd, the lowest station of the Petrin funicular. Opened in 1891, this funicular connects the lesser town to the top of Petrin Hill, one of the best places to visit in Prague. Once at the top of Petrin Hill, there's a lot to do. First of all, the hill itself is a huge park with gardens, monuments and an observatory. The area's highlight, though, is the Petrin Lookout Tower. Inspired by the Eiffel Tower in Paris, this steel tower was built in 1891. It offers panoramic views of the entire city of Prague from its observation gallery, which can be accessed via 299 steps or a lift. While on Petrin Hill, you have the opportunity to enjoy one of the funniest things to do in Prague. At the Mirror Maze, you can visit a labyrinth of mirrors and see the diorama of the Battle of Prague against the Swedes. Yet, the fun begins once you step inside the Hall of Laughter, which is called that for good reason. On your way back to the city center, don't take the funicular but walk instead to admire the spectacular views at every turn. At the foot of Petrin Hill, stop for a minute at the controversial memorial to the victims of communism. A 20-minute walk or tram ride away, the Dancing House awaits. Constructed in 1996, this modern building was inspired by the famous dance duo Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. The Dancing House is now one of Prague's most iconic landmarks. Very close to the Dancing House, it's worth making a stop at the National Memorial to the heroes of the Heydrich Terror. The crypt that lies beneath the church of Saints Cyril and Methodius was the hiding place of the soldiers who assassinated Reinhard Heydrich, a high-ranking SS officer and one of the masterminds behind the Holocaust. In the dark depths of the crypt, you will learn everything about the planning, the execution, and the aftermath of the assassination. Your last sightseeing stop for the day is a 20-minute tram ride away. Vyšehrad is a historic fort in Prague that dates back to the 10th century. On its grounds, you can visit the neo-Gothic church of Saints Peter and Paul and take a peaceful stroll around Vyšehrad Cemetery, the resting place of several prominent artists, scientists, and politicians. Yet, the main reason to visit Vyšehrad is to catch the most jaw-dropping views of Prague, especially at sunset. End your day with a stroll along Naplavka, stopping at its quaint riverside bars for a glass of Czech beer along the way. Naplavka is one of the liveliest parts of the city, especially on a sunny day when locals flock to the riverside bars and cafes to catch the sun. The opposite bank of the river is also known as Naplavka, and you can reach it by a short ferry ride. In the daytime, you can also get from one bank of the Vltava River to the other by crossing the Vyšehrad railway bridge. If you're planning to see Prague in 4 days, we have some amazing suggestions for your last day in the city. Start with a walk around the new town, but don't let its name fool you. The new town was founded in the distant 1348. Step inside the church of Our Lady of the Snows and then look for some of the city's quirkiest spots: the world's only cubist street lamp, the hanging statues, and of course, the rotating head of Franz Kafka. Any guesses about who built this futuristic sculpture? Yes, it was David Cherney again. This impressive statue comprises 42 rotating layers, each of which can move independently. Kafka's head puts on its special show every hour for 15 minutes. Your next stop is one of Prague's main squares. Wenceslas Square is more of a boulevard than a square, and it's the busiest pedestrian zone in the Czech Republic. At its southeast end, Wenceslas Square is dominated by the grand neoclassical building that houses the National Museum of Prague. In front of the museum, you can see the memorial to Jan Palach, a student who killed himself in an act of political protest against the invasion of the Soviets into Czechoslovakia. At the square, you can admire the statue of Saint Wenceslas and several historic buildings. A small detour will lead you to Lucerna Passage, where you can have a look at a quirkier version of Saint Wenceslas riding his horse, a work by, David Cherney. While at Wenceslas Square, grab a beer at Prague's railway restaurant if you have time. Sitting at a pub where beer is served by trains doesn't happen every day. Take the tram to Žižkov, one of Prague's off-the-beaten-path neighborhoods. Built between 1928 and 1932, the Church of the Most Sacred Heart of Our Lord is a modern building that resembles Noah's Ark. Yet the main reason you're in Žižkov is to climb the iconic television tower. Often listed as one of the ugliest buildings in the world, Žižkov Tower offers panoramic views of the entire city from its viewing deck, situated 93 meters above the ground. Don't worry, there's a lift. From the tower's windows, you'll notice some familiar faces. It's David Cherney's Crawling Babies again. If you're a huge fan of Cherney's work by now, watch our Liberec video to get a glimpse of one of his most famous creations. In that video, you will also see another impressive TV tower, the imposing Gestad Tower. There's no better place to end your 4-day Prague itinerary than a lovely beer garden in the heart of a beautiful park. Riegrovy Sandy is one of the most relaxing parks in Prague and one of the city's best viewpoints. If the postcard-perfect view of Prague Castle from Riegrovy Sandy is the last thing you see during your 4-day trip to Prague, there's no turning back. You are doomed to never stop going back to one of the world's most beautiful capital cities. But that's no doom, that's pure bliss. If you're visiting Prague soon, Click on the links in the travel resources section you will find in the description below to help you plan your trip. If you enjoyed our video about how to spend 4 days in Prague, please like, comment and share it. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.